Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Reviving Mississippi, where our goal is to revive Mississippi. Now we're not saying Mississippi is dead, but Mississippi is on life support and it's going to take good folks coming together, working together to bring our state to where it needs to be. I'm your host, DeKeitha Stamps. We got our gorgeous co-host here, Miss GailiaTaylor. How you doing, Gailia?
Good morning, DeKeitha. I'm doing well. How are you?
If I was in the bed, I'd be you.
Oh, you got to do a little bit better than that. Always a pleasure.
We just got done with a tremendous election, didn't we?
If you'd like to call it that, I'll go with you on that.
Hey, elections are like mirrors. They show us exactly who we are.
I'm concerned about what I saw, if that's the case.
What'd you see?
Let me choose my words carefully, DeKeitha. What I saw was something that was disappointing for me. Is it just me, or do Mississippians tend to vote against their own best interests?
Well, you know, people vote for many different reasons. They may vote because of how they've been trained to vote. They may vote how the culture around them votes. They may vote how the media tells them to vote. So we have to work on all those things, from media to the overall culture, but we can do it. You know, our generation is that generation of Mississippians who've seen Mississippi go from, you know, no textbooks in schools to some schools having iPads.
That's amazing. So that is, there's progress.
There's progress. So
that's
why our generation is going to be important to Mississippi history, because we're the generation that went from, you know, I know my aunt's house. My aunt out in Edwards.
Yes.
A few years ago, her neighbor was the only person on the street with a phone.
Are you serious?
And we had to call her neighbor, and they would run down the street and get her, and she'd come to the phone.
Wow.
And now you got Mississippians with cell phones and houses. So our generation has seen that Mississippi move from one place to another. And it's going to be incumbent upon us who have that understanding of what Mississippi was to bring Mississippi to where it needs to be. So I'm hopeful that we can continue to move this thing forward.
I'm usually the optimist in the room.
Right.
And I won't switch. I will believe, and I see the picture you're painting, and I see the progress. So I think that it can be possible. I may be just a little bit impatient.
I know.
My desire is to see us jump leap years ahead, and we're just not there yet.
I know. When you sit back and look at Mississippi, I feel your frustration. You know, you see Georgia has an Atlanta. Right. You know, Louisiana, with all Louisiana's problems. Right. They have a New Orleans and a Baton Rouge. You know, you see Texas, you know, has healthy, vibrant cities like Dallas and Houston and even California. Right. You know, has Los Angeles and San Diego and those things. And you sit back and look at Mississippi. So why can't we come together to build? Why can't we have Jackson as a destination rather than a pass through from here to Jackson or from here to Memphis or here to New Orleans? Why can't we be a destination city? What concerns me when it comes to Mississippi and the image, DeKeitha, and this is where you have to help me. Okay. You and your optimism and your knowledge of statewide politics. I need an understanding of what it is that causes Mississippi to continue to do the things that, rather than attract people to come and see how great we are, because there are a lot of great things about Mississippi. We tend to do things that, I say we because I'm a Mississippian, we tend to do things that repel people, that turn people off, that make them not want to come. Do you know there are people in the world who still believe only what they see on the news about Mississippi? That's right. Who will not come because of what they see and what they believe to be our reality. How do we shift that? Well, we have to identify what I call caveman thinking. Explain. All right, so caveman thinking is that closed-minded Neanderthal/Viking kind of mindset that permeates in certain places and not all of Mississippi. And we must identify it and call it out when we see it. And that closed-minded thinking that holds us back, especially amongst leadership. Leadership should be about setting the example and being, you know, putting an example of hope, you know, so people can be hopeful. You know, give people government they can believe in. Here's something you just tapped on, and it crossed my mind as you said it, leadership. There was a time when I expected that elected officials were the elite of our areas. That's right. The people that were being sent to represent us in the state Senate and the representatives, House of Representatives, even local politicians. As I've grown and matured some and had an opportunity to work behind the scenes,
what I've come to know is people elect people almost like a population contest, or not population, but popularity contest. So sometimes the people that have been elected and sent to state office and even in local offices, it's not necessarily because they are the best and the brightest. They just happen to have said something that was popular enough, impactful enough to get people to go along with them. But they are representatives of the community that sent them there. Not always in the best way, though. They just happen to be representative of the ideals of the people that sent them there. And sometimes when those are backwoods people, even though they may get into our state offices in particular, I'm thinking of that level, they get into those spaces, and rather than think about what's good for the whole of the state, they tend to still go along with the politics of that mindset of the people that sent them there. That's kind of a two-edged sword. On the one hand, you want to represent the people that sent you. On the other hand, you need to represent all people in the greater good.
Right.
Help me understand.
Well, I believe a lot of times the leadership is holding the people back. I believe the people are further ahead on our issues than the leadership is. Let me give you an example. There's a young lady, it was one of our clients. We also have a landscaping company. And my guys were out cutting her grass. And she left the gate locked in the backyard. And so I called her up. I said, hey, you know, the gate's locked. She was like, well, tell your guys to go next door and talk to Cynthia. Cynthia has a key, and she can open the door, walk through the house, and unlock the gate. Okay. So my guys called me. She said, hey, man, the lady next door is black, and the customer's white. And he's like, I don't think that's the right house. And she said, yeah, Cynthia has the key to my house. She can take the alarm off and go through, unlock the gate, and let you in. So we have situations in rural Rankin County where black folks have keys to white folks' houses, know the code, can go in, unlock everything, and allow you to go in. I thought for a second, I don't even have a key to my sister's house.
Right, so that's some serious trust.
So in some areas, Mississippi is further ahead than our leadership. See, our leadership would display to us a type of leadership that we're divided, that we don't talk to each other, that we don't trust each other. Right. But in actuality,
it's not that bad.
The black folks and white folks, Democrat and Republican, come together all the time.
I agree. I've seen it happen.
We come together and
I have peers from both sides, so I agree.
We come together on all these different other things. But then when it's time for campaigns and election, okay, guys, it's time for everybody to go to their corner and throw rocks at each other. Right. But as soon as the election's over with, now we come back together, we go hunting together, we go fishing together, our kids hang out together, and we don't necessarily be who that political stuff pushes us in the corner to be. And if we can get beyond that, and that's what I call caveman thinking. Caveman thinking locks you in a cave and everybody go back to their respective caves, when in actuality, we all have a good time in the sunlight.
We love playing together, and we can love each other and work well together, except for some of those in the far reaches and backwoods areas, as we call it. Yeah. And so those people are entrenched in their beliefs and thoughts. But why is it that even though we can socialize together and we can commune together comfortably, why is it that in those cases, with some of those people, Republicans maybe, and we don't have to choose sides, but in Mississippi, that's just what it is. When those policies don't move Mississippi forward as it should, when they're voting against issues that Mississippians need, healthcare, for example, when they're voting against the very issues that would impact Mississippi in a positive way,
that's right.
How do you move them to vote for the greater good?
Well, you know, have a conversation without the triggers. A lot of times people have been trained to vote a certain way or to represent us a certain way based on some national conversations and national narratives, which is not our local reality.
This is true.
Our local reality is, you know, our biggest issues stem from poverty, education, healthcare, criminal justice reform, and a strong local economy. If we can agree on those 5 issues, and we can say, okay, now, when it comes to education, how much should we pay? Or how much should the corporations chip in to pay? You know, right now we're in the midst of the largest tax shift in Mississippi's history, where they're taking the burden of paying taxes and putting it on the people and taking it off the corporations. So that's what's really happening. They're using this little political stuff to divide us, whether it be race or party. But our local, average, everyday citizens' taxes are increasing because the state is taking the burden off the corporations by giving them a corporate tax break, but now shifting it to the local governments. And now your local governments across the state are having to raise their taxes to pay for a lot of these unfunded mandates. So now they can say they cut taxes. No, they shifted taxes.
Exactly.
Same
the money
thing.
is still coming out. It's just coming out of the pockets of the people.
Exactly. And that's what's happening. And we have to stand strong against that and not allow for the political discourse to take us to where our respective corners are.
I got it.
And you see, when they say we cut taxes, well, cut taxes on who? Because small businesses pay taxes locally. So when you take things out of the state side and shift it over, same thing with the lottery. Every other lottery in the country goes to education.
Right.
But our lottery is going to infrastructure. So who buys lottery tickets? Poor people.
Poor people.
People who make less. The majority of lottery tickets are sold to folks who make less than $27,000 a year.
Wow.
So that's money, that $50, $60 million a year that the lottery is going to produce. Some say 80, but the bulk of that will come from people who make less than $30,000.
And when you say it goes to infrastructure, talk about those projects that are going to come out of
neighborhood.
That's the next thing I wanted to know.
Right.
Where's the infrastructure improvement going to happen?
Right.
And then here's the other side of it, particularly since my background is in advocacy for minority-owned businesses.
Right.
For a good portion of my career.
Right.
I'm always sensitive to the idea that when you start talking about infrastructure and infrastructure improvement projects,
Right.
the majority of the companies that do that type of work are not owned by people that look like us.
That's correct.
Although they may have subcontract opportunities, the goal is to build up these smaller companies and minority-owned companies so that they can become a prime contractor. So if you're talking infrastructure and projects, who's overseeing that to make sure that the people who benefit from those projects are not all of one hue?
Right. So what I see happening is, more of the same. Hopefully, Brother Willie Simmons can help out a little bit to regard. But Mississippi is averaging a little less than 1% going to minority contractors.
That's the unfortunate thing.
That's black and white women put together. So we got a lot of work to do.
Got a whole lot of work to do.
And identifying.
Because this is going to make another level of class divide. It's going to enrich a whole lot of people who already have some wealth. But it's going to make them wealthier if you start issuing out these so-called infrastructure improvement projects. And again, who's responsible for determining where those projects take place? Exactly.
The lottery corporation is a grow. It's gonna grow big here in Mississippi because people are looking for hope.
Right.
And so we're financing government off of lottery tickets. It's not even the Department of Transportation is laughable in this conversation. Long-term planning. How can you plan over the course of 5 and 10 years when you don't know how many lottery tickets you're gonna sell?
This is true.
So it's laughable when it comes to people who are in the business of planning infrastructure projects. When you look at, $60, $80 million, you divide that times 82 counties or so, now you're looking at $1 million a county.
And in infrastructure, $1 million does not go that far.
Right. So even Commissioner Dick Hall said, whoever's trying to finance infrastructure work with the amount of infrastructure we need from lottery tickets, that's laughable. Everyone from the Mississippi Economic Council to our transportation commissioners said that an increase in the gasoline user fee is what needs to happen so it's sustainable.
Right.
People
are going to buy gas.
You're going to chart it. You'll be able to plan for how much you need.
Right.
But to say we're going to plan our infrastructure around lottery tickets, it's just laughable. And
especially if it's based on Mississippians buying, because you think the number of Mississippians who bought lottery tickets over in Louisiana, crossed the line to go over there, may have been a lot, but I guess here's my question. Will the number of people buying lottery tickets in Mississippi increase? And now that they don't have to go to Louisiana, is anybody coming from another state to buy tickets in Mississippi?
Let me give you the real issue with this lottery. It made it more accessible to the average person around Mississippi.
Right.
Most poor people aren't going to Louisiana to buy a lottery ticket.
Okay.
But they'll walk down the street to the corner gas station and buy one.
Take a chance on a dollar scratch off.
Right. So now you'll have $80 million mainly out of poor people's hands that's not buying stuff in their community.
Right.
So the lottery doesn't create jobs. All right. There's no new jobs going to be created by going to the lottery.
That's right, because they're going to go through stores that already exist.
Exactly.
This is just adding another product line to them.
It takes economy out of people's pockets that could be inside of their. You're going to have people spending more money on lottery tickets than life insurance.
That's scary.
All right. So
and again, justifying it by the chance that they're going to win.
Right. So, what we need is more financial literacy. They said the same thing when it came to talking about casinos in Mississippi. They said, we're going to fund education.
Did that ever really happen?
Right. But this is that caveman thinking that we got to root out at the state level. We have to take the leadership. It's going to take leadership to do this, to evolve us to some thinking that is prosperous, that envisions a Mississippi where we're growing, not just growing at a small rate, but the states around us are growing at a greater rate. And so that's why we have to, work on education, because ignorance is manipulated by people in power. The more ignorance they can spread, the easier you are to be manipulated.
You think about the fact that race is a political reality.
Right.
It was invented so that the divisions could happen. And if I keep you fighting at the lower levels over something like your racial identity, you can't pay attention to what I'm doing at the top. While I'm taking your money, both of you are poor.
Right.
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to use the terminology my granddaddy used, but I'm going to share it because it puts some things in perspective.
Right.
It wasn't bad. It was just a simple analogy.
Right.
When he would say, when I was growing up, he said, there's nothing that a white man with a penny hates worse than a nigger with a nickel. And the lesson for us when he would say that was, you may have something, and this white man may have something, but neither of you has much. You're both still poor, but because he feels like he should be superior, he wants to be better at being poor than you. It's the craziest thing. At the end of the day, you both should be working together to work on something that will get you elevated. And your issue is not with another poor person. Your issue is with the people who are trying to withhold power and resources from you and your communities. That's what I meant when I asked you about people voting against their own interests.
The sad part today is we're raising our children in a more racially and economically divided community than we grew up in.
This is so true, and it's frightening to see.
Right. That's how we're raising our children, in a more racially and economically divided community amongst social classes than when we grew up. When we grew up, there were white kids down the street. Now you go through South Jackson, it's 99% black.
Wow.
The schools in Jackson Public Schools and around, a lot of them are still segregated because of race and class.
Right.
And when they were more integrated in our past, and I think it made us better. It really made everyone better when people started to work together.
It helps when you get accustomed to working alongside people that look different than you and people from diverse backgrounds, when you can put them all together. And because of the time I spent doing racial diversity training, I understand that racial thinking is taught behavior. Little children will play together and think nothing of it, and they quite often find themselves harmed and hurt when you start telling them, you can't play with Leroy, you can't play with Betty, you can't play with Mallory or whomever. You can't play together because somebody at home is saying she's different from you. And the kid is usually, and I've heard this in these training circles that I've done with racial diversity, when somebody says, when was your first experience with noticing that there was a difference in your race? And it always usually stems back to some childhood episode, sometime when some child was playing along. We were friends when we were in preschool. Now we're in grade school, and all of a sudden, you don't want to be my friend anymore. But it's because your daddy or your mama told you something was different about us. And now the child doesn't understand, but they go along with the training because that's mama and daddy.
And some of that thinking is on both sides of the race. It's on black folks' side and white folks. We have to get beyond some of these things.
I agree.
I used to tell folks in the military, when they come in and come from all over the world, I had a platoon one time that had a couple of brothers who were part of some white supremacy groups.
Oh, wow.
And had a couple brothers from New York who were part of the Black Power movement. Our parents were part of the Black Power movement. And just a few other regular folks like myself who were just from, regular places across the country.
Right.
And we brought it together because we all have to work together.
Right.
We all have to work together. And it's going to take all of us to revive Mississippi. Not just this group or that group. It's going to take everybody working together because it's hard to hate somebody that you played in the sandbox with.
This is true.
Very hard to be taught to hate somebody that you played in the sandbox with. So that's why we gotta teach our children to work together so that they can bring us to the point where Mississippi needs to be. And that's what we talk about here at Reviving Mississippi, is about ways to revive this state. When you look at our governor's race this time, it could have been better. What were your thoughts about the governor's race?
I was disappointed in the outcome. Obviously, I had a different candidate in mind as the victor. I was disappointed to see the gentleman who won bring in the national folks, the president and the vice president, who have practiced such divisive politics at a national level, and to compare Mississippi with that, saying that I want to make Mississippi great again. I want to make Mississippi run it like they run America. In my mind, America's in really bad shape. There may be some things that are progressing and doing okay, but as far as the rise again of the racial divide and the racial tensions, the rise of being okay with oppressing some population because they look different or because they come from a different place, whatever happened to the time when America was the place you came because you wanted to improve your life. And so to see the governor-elect talk about wanting to mirror that kind of politics, that kind of behavior, and to need to bring in those people to, to kind of ramp up,
Right. I got you.
stir up
I got you.
that part of the population was disturbing for me.
Well, look back historically to today. Just a few years ago when Jesse Jackson ran for president, Jesse Jackson won Mississippi.
Wow.
All right, so now how do you go from Jesse Jackson winning Mississippi's electoral votes when he ran for president to having a deep red, where I think the numbers now are 70% of Mississippians are pro-Trump?
That's amazing to me.
Right? So how do you get there? How do you get to this point?
That's my concern. What is it that happened in the mindsets of Mississippians? What shifted? What do you think?
So what we've been able to identify is that in the late 80s, when Jesse Jackson ran for president, the civil rights generation were in their 40s and 50s.
Right.
So they were in their highest economic time of their lives and still healthy and agile enough to be the pillars of our political and social systems here in the state.
Gotcha.
Now, during the Obama time, they rose up for one last gasp.
Right.
To give us one last gasp. And now it's incumbent upon our generation. That's why I say it's really important with our generation.
I agree.
Our generation is important because we've seen Mississippi and America go from this to this. We've seen Mississippi go from, no telephones in the neighborhood to a few telephones in the neighborhood to cell phones in everybody's pocket.
I agree.
We've seen Mississippi go from no textbooks and hand-me-down textbooks to some schools having iPads in schools. So we've seen Mississippi go from one place to other. We have to use our experience and our experience here in Mississippi and do not something new, just do what's been done in the past.
Like?
We need freedom fighters. We need old school freedom
21st century.
21st century who. That's how Jesse Jackson won Mississippi, because you had people in each voting precinct engaged in the process. So we're calling on people around this state. There are a little over 1,800 voting precincts in this state. We need one or two folks in each voting precinct.
Let me ask you this about that.
In each voting precincts engaged in the process. So we're going to ring the bell and ask folks to come join us. Join us and help us revive Mississippi by supporting us in each voting precinct. And let's those folks educate inside their voting precinct on issues. Just give folks the truth. And that's what we're going to look for.
When you talk about our generation and some of the younger ones, I'm a little bit disturbed by the narrative you see play out nationally.
Right.
And then there's a contingent of our generation and younger people who feel like race is not a real issue. They are enjoying some success in their own little worlds, but not plugged into the national conversation and the national reality, which means that they're even less concerned and connected to what's happening right in front of our eyes in our own state. How do you deal with that mindset of it's not a big deal?
All right, so let's put it into perspective of what race is and what it's used for.
Okay.
All right, so classism is the real issue.
You're right.
Classism uses racism as a shield to push people in different directions to maintain classism.
I can
We
see
talked
that.
about the tax shift earlier, and we talked about the burden being put on lower income folks and just people, just regular people.
Right.
So now that keeps one group wealthy and a large group of people poor, disenfranchised, without proper services to move their community forward. And so when they say it's not the real issue, I would just frame it to say more so that we must identify that classism is what's keeping the corporations and a few folks taken care of really well, and the masses. See, Mississippi is a microcosm of this whole country.
I can see that too.
And what Mississippi has the ability to do is to prove that the very idea of America can work. And that's what Mississippi, see, the idea of America is that folks can come together, they can work together, and they can build communities, build governments, build businesses, and have a prosperous future. That's the basis idea of America.
Okay.
Now, Mississippi is important because Mississippi have people who believe in America. Red, white, and blue, and apple pie all day.
Okay.
But we have to rise above our lower level differences to really prove that the idea of America can work. And that's what's special about Mississippi is we can bring black folks and white folks, Democrats and Republicans, and everyone else to the table. And men and women of goodwill can write policy and run government in a better way. But we have to get rid of the caveman mindset. If we can identify the caveman mindset and say, now, this is what we need to get rid of because we're trying to grow a state here, not dig a cave.
How do we do it?
We elect people who do not display any caveman mindset, first and foremost. If you have any type of caveman mindset, whether it be Neanderthal or Viking, it's got to go.
So how do we identify the caveman in the room?
Well, the cavemen beat themselves on the chest and say how prosperous we are when we're the poorest state in the union.
That's always alarming for me when I see that. Mississippi's great. We're doing fantastic. And I'm going, what state do you live in?
Right.
Which Mississippi are you in?
Right. They're coming from a different Mississippi. And so that's what we're saying is we're saying that we need to revive Mississippi by rooting out the caveman mindset.
Okay, so with that understood and identifying them, that's the basic level. So a couple of things. How do we educate the populace on caveman mentality, what it is and why it has to go?
Right. So,
and then how do we identify those people that fall into that category so that they can be branded as such and ousted? Right.
So what we do first is look for those in their commentary. And when people talk, they tell you exactly
who they are.
Right. Just let them talk. And if their conversation is about them prospering or us prospering, is their track record about them prospering or about all of us prospering?
Got it.
And if their track record is mainly about them and a small group of people prospering while the rest of Mississippi goes to crap, they got to go.
So do we need a rating system that has caveman, progressive? Maybe those are the parties we need. We need caveman and progressive thinkers.
Well, let's
identify them.
Instead of being, again, a lot of folks have been trained that progressive is bad. So let's not call it progressive. Let's call it, the people who want to grow Mississippi's economy or the people who want Mississippi's economy to maintain and be depressed.
Okay.
Let's build an economy here because, see, what we're doing is we're locking ourselves out of the global economy. See, by
That's
not
the frightening
having,
part.
right, see, the global economy is moving all around this region. And right now it's skipping from Birmingham to Memphis to New Orleans to, Baton Rouge and over to Houston and to Atlanta and to Dallas.
And Mississippi's being left out.
Being left out of the conversation because we're not even tapping into the global economy because we haven't built up the state enough. The number one reason we don't have a pro football team in the state?
What is it?
We don't have a concentration of people who can buy the tickets.
That makes sense. If the population can't afford the tickets, then why would you have the team?
It's not if you build it, they will come.
No,
because if
they would want to come.
They would want to come. They can't
but
afford,
they can't afford to come.
Tickets, right? So that's why we have to build Mississippi's economy to compete in our region because the pro basketball circuit is skipping from Memphis to New Orleans and over to Dallas to Atlanta.
Exactly.
The pro
we're
football,
missing it out.
Right. The pro football circuit is skipping from New Orleans to Nashville over to Dallas. That's why we have to build this economy up and make it so that we can grow. And that's why the caveman mindset must go. One of the biggest economic boosters of this state's history.
What?
It was the Civil Rights Movement.
Why is that?
Before the Civil Rights Movement, nobody wanted to come put a dime in Mississippi.
So they saw progress and saw possibility after that.
After we became more inclusive and folks started working together to a moderate degree, people started building yachts on the coast and started building mansions all over the place and bringing money here and investing and building an economy. Before that, Mississippi was in the dark.
Wow.
Literally in the dark.
So it was worse than it is
by
now.
us working together and even just starting the process, we haven't really just totally been working together, but just by the Civil Rights Movement breaking the yoke of our oppressive past to a degree,
right?
It moved our economy forward. And it's time to do the same thing again. It's time for us to recruit freedom fighters in every voting precinct.
We need a 21st century freedom fighter, civil rights movement.
All of it. Because we have to get this economy in this state to where it needs to be, and it's going to take all of us to do it. And I'm just overjoyed to be a part of it, and we're looking for more people to be a part of it. And
so with that in mind, one of the conversations that we have often is what we call the brain drain from Mississippi. Right. And as a parent, I sent both of my college-age students out of the state.
Right.
I anticipate that at least one of them is going to return. She has a devout interest in politics in Mississippi, and I'm loving it. However, one of the reasons I sent them away was because we'd always lived here, not traveled as much as I would have liked, but I needed for them to have exposure to other ways of thinking and other people, other environments.
That's right.
And both of them have come back and said that they absolutely appreciated it and loved it.
Right.
Now, the challenge is other people are sending their children away too.
Right.
The problem is, how do you get them back? And even for the ones that stay, when they start looking for opportunity and they start to have an awakening, which generally happens in college, you elevate to a different level of thinking. You start thinking about the rest of your life.
That's right.
What do we do to get those minds, those great minds, to want to stay connected in Mississippi? Most of them are, I won't say most, but quite a lot of them cannot imagine staying here. Why?
Well, again, the caveman thinking takes root, and you have people exuding the actual attributes of cavemen. You have that Neanderthal type culture that goes around, and people don't want to be a part of that. They want to be a part of, sunlight. They want to be a part of something that's refreshing, something that's inspiring. And that's what leaders have to do. Leaders can't be cavemen. Leaders have to be leaders that inspire hope in people, that give people just the idea, you know what, we can do it.
Right.
And that's what leaders have to inspire. And leaders must never evoke caveman. They must evoke aspiration. They must evoke hope in everybody they're in charge of leading. And I'm not saying you just elect black folks.
Right.
You should elect people who can
with
look people
the right
in the
mindset.
eye. Right. Who can look people in the eye and people say, hey, you know what? I feel hope again. Not people who you look in the eye and you say it's going to be the same thing.
Exactly.
And that's what we have to root out. We have to look good white folks, good black folks, and everybody, just good people, period.
Right.
Who are going to move this state forward. Because if we don't, the global economy around us is going to continue to increase, and we're going to continue to decrease.
How do you get people who are...
Let's take a pause for a second.
Sure.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Reviving Mississippi. We appreciate you. We appreciate the love and support y'all given us over the years, and all our friends over here at Viral Stream TV for helping us out. So thanks a lot for your support. And we're going to let Gailia go and finish this conversation. Know what you thought, Gailia?
This is nice of you to do. And then I said, what was I thinking? What was that thought? Just curious still, and I know we keep hitting on this. Mm-hmm. I just need a better understanding of how you get those people who are suffering. Mm-hmm. They don't have much, mm-hmm. but they feel, I guess it's caveman-ish, mm-hmm. tribal-ish. They feel attached to their identity with, they're poor, but they feel attached to people who have more because they look like them and don't understand that these people over here with money don't care about you, white, black, or other, because you're not in their class. But how do you get them to stop voting against the interest of their level of class, their level of economics, mm-hmm. and start voting for the greater good? Let's do something that's going to make Mississippi move forward. You talked about the need to be economically savvy and to move greater. How do we get their minds there?
Well, a lot of our training goes back to slavery, not just the slavery portion of Black folks.
I was about to say, you don't mean just the Black people, but...
Because see, when the overseer mm-hmm. didn't have education,
right,
didn't have health care.
But he felt powerful because somebody
right.
put him in charge of this Negro.
Right, so again, his children didn't have health care, his children didn't have education, his wife couldn't vote. Mm. All right, so he couldn't vote. Mm-hmm. He just wasn't at this point. So what I'm saying is, that we have to identify this caveman mindset that is locked in the commitment to folks who are the descendants of the overseers and the descendants of the slaves to say, hey, let's work together, because none of us have education, health care, poverty is a big issue,
right?
Criminal justice reform, none of us have businesses. Mm-hmm. That's what we have to work together to build, is that coalition of folks look eye to eye. When Leroy and Jesse, mm-hmm. Jesse may have a Confederate flag tattoo, and Leroy may have a
Black Panther,
right?
Uh-huh.
But when they look folks eyeball to eyeball,
right.
and say, hell, hold on. Now we got to work together, because our children don't have access
right.
to what they need access to. And that's what's going to have to change in Mississippi.
It's that identity politics right, that is an issue.
Identify that I need. All right?
That's the thing that concerns me. Right. While you're on that point, and it was on a national news report that I saw it, but I never forgot it, when they interviewed a man, older white man, living in what could be described as a shack.
Right.
And asked him what he thought about healthcare. He says, I need it. What do you think about Obamacare? He says, I don't want anything to do with that. And they said, well, what about the Affordable Care Act? Yeah, I'll take that. And I'm sitting there laughing, going, this cannot be real.
Right.
But it's identity, politics, terminology,
right.
uneducated mindset that doesn't say, you do realize it's the same thing.
Exactly.
But so that's where my concern comes,
right.
though, is how do we get past that level of thinking? How do you educate? And I do community outreach and education in my career, but I still find it challenging to deal with a certain subset of the population when it comes to trying to bring them together. Because you first not only have to get them to come together, but you got to get them to listen.
That's right.
And then once they listen, to get their minds to receive what you're telling them. How do you think we open minds, open eyes? How do you change the ignorance?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. When I was in the military, I used to run across, I was in the Marine Corps, I was in special operations, so it was not that many black folks.
That's why I'm scared of you, but go ahead.
There wasn't many black folks in those fields, right? Well, what I realized is that if a young man or woman has been taught the sky is green their whole life, if their daddy taught them the sky green, their mama said the sky green, they meemaw, papaw,
right,
and their teacher and
their
principal has taught them the sky is green. When they send them to me in the Marine Corps and they show up in my platoon, I can tell them the sky is blue all day long.
in their mind, they're going to hear you, but they're going to still see green when they look up.
But what I got to do, I got to show an example and build trust. And through working, and they see something, they're going to go home and have a contrast of what they were taught versus what their eyes can see. And that's why it's incumbent on Black folks to lead with character, lead with vision, do what's necessary, and show folks a contrast that Black folks don't bleed green.
Wow. In
a personal way. And then now one-on-one, you can start to move people. But if they don't want to move themselves, us as people got to move anyway.
Right.
We got to build an economy inside our own community.
True.
And we have to start doing what we need to do and start waiting on folks to give us. Because one thing my grandfather taught me is that ain't nobody got to do nothing for you. If the government, don't wait on the government to give you resources. Don't wait on white folks to give you resources. Go do it for yourself and move forward. And that's what we have to do inside the Black community, is start moving ourselves. And what's going to happen? When you start building an economy inside your own community, there's some poor folks down the street going to say, hey, man, what y'all doing over here?
How you do it?
How can I do it? Can I help? Can I participate? And now you start leading people through a process of evolving their mindset beyond their racial training or division. And you lead them through action.
Got it.
That's how we move Mississippi forward, is by leading people through action.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I'm concerned.
And example.
I'm concerned that there are other communities that, based on their racial identity politics, but they work together. And you tend to know what industries they're in. You know, generally Indians have hotels and gas stations. Vietnamese people have nail shops. And others have their different cultural. Mexicans have restaurants. And I'm loosely grouping people. But the truth of the matter is those communities work well together and with a distinct purpose and intention. When it comes to the Black community, how do we get our own to move towards that kind of thinking? How do we get us to come together and work together and support each other? Unfortunately, you and I have been in business. We both know how it is. That oftentimes we've had to go outside of our own community to get the kind of support we need to grow our businesses. I think there's twofold issue there. I learned that sometimes our people don't support us not because we're not good enough, but because they don't have the resources to support us. They may say otherwise, and they may look like they have it going on, but quite often they just don't have the money. They can't do business with us because they can't afford to do business with us. Other times it's that white is right mentality, that I got to get it from somewhere else because I don't trust this person that looks just like me. That's an internalized racism against your own and against yourself. How do you suggest we move our people? When I say our people, I'm concerned about Mississippians, but I'm particularly concerned about the group that I identify with, which is African Americans, Black people. How do we move us?
Well, just like the Civil Rights Movement, they didn't try to save everybody. When Martin Luther King came to Jackson, Mississippi, only 2 churches let him in.
Really?
All right, so of the 400 churches that were here at the time, only 2 of them let him in the door.
Wow.
So remember, it's only gonna be a few.
Okay.
So what you do is work with the few, and the masses will benefit years to come. They will associate themselves with the progress and claim that they played a role in it, which they probably did.
So we have to stop worrying about
don't try to save everybody.
Okay.
See, I'm a Marine.
Okay.
I'm only looking for a few good men and a few good women.
So the optimist in me wants to save the world.
Right. You save the world by work with the willing. See, you go to war with the army you got.
Right. Got it.
You use what you have and you start moving forward.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is stop trying to move the masses because the masses are drunk on football.
Wow.
They're drunk on distractions. They're drunk on Facebook.
Okay.
They're drunk on all these other things.
Okay.
What we're saying is that go to a group, identify the willing, and move on out.
Got it.
And through our work, through our example, over time, over the next 40 or 50 years, God willing, the masses will move to a degree. But we will never move the masses by trying to move the masses. You move the masses by moving a few, and you get to work on building an internal network of economy and start moving it forward. And once something changes, everybody's going to take credit for it and say what they did to do the change.
So we're just not going to worry about the outcome of how everybody else is going to attach. We're just going to take, as I'm understanding you, we're going to take the few.
That's right.
The few willing participants.
That's right.
And I guess that could play over into not just the Black culture, but that could play over into Mississippi as a whole.
Mississippi as a whole.
We can take the few Mississippians who are willing to play well together.
So there are good Black folks and good white folks.
I agree. And good everyone else.
And good Democrats and good Republicans who want to work together.
Right.
Because really, to be honest with you, a lot of these national issues come in to divide us.
Right. I can see
Most
that.
of the time, if you did a survey, most Mississippians agree when it comes to their position on guns. But why do we have a divisive conversation when most Mississippians agree on guns?
Mississippi is a hunting state, and the hunters will tell you, I don't need an AK-47 or whatever the big gun is to kill a deer.
Right. So, again, we agree on, when it comes to these nationally divisive issues, that's why we don't focus on those. We focus on poverty, education, healthcare, criminal justice reform, and a strong local economy. Those 5 issues are what we focus on.
And those things will move Mississippi forward if we can improve them in our various communities.
Let me focus on that, because what they do is they throw up these divisive issues and distract us from our priorities.
Right.
And those 5 issues are our priority. When you're the poorest state in the union, poverty is your number 1 issue.
Exactly.
When you're the least educated state in the union, education is your number 1 issue. When you're the most obese state, healthcare is your number 1 issue. When you incarcerate more people per capita than any other state in the union, criminal justice reform is your issue.
Right.
When you give corporate tax breaks to corporations, but small businesses are getting pinched down because the people can't afford to participate, now a local economy is important. So those 5 issues, if we stay focused on those 5 main priorities and not allow for the abortion debate or the gun debate or these other things
that don't affect us directly
as much. They affect us,
but they're not priority, as you say.
What I'm saying is, let's keep what we agree on. See, what I do is I start a conversation with what I agree on first.
Right.
And start working with what we agree on, because government is slow. If we started with what we disagree on, we never get anything done.
This is true.
But people elect us to get stuff done.
Right.
And so, from my position, my basic form of leadership is, let's start with what we agree on. People ask me, I got a record of working with Democrats and Republicans.
I know, I've seen you in action.
Right. And so, but I work with on things we agree on, that the people I represent agree on. People say, some folks will ask me, how in the world do you one week go and work with the White House and other Republicans across the nation on criminal justice reform, but then next week you're back here campaigning on different sides of an issue? It's just the way it works. On that issue, we agree. Okay. And I'll stand there and I'll work with you on that.
Right.
When it comes to opportunity zones, and I've worked with this White House on 2 main issues. Okay. Criminal justice reform and opportunity zones. Okay. Opportunity zones allow for tax money to be used in areas to uplift disenfranchised areas. Okay. So we agree. Right. So that we agree on, we need to go to work on those issues. And on our side, our leadership shouldn't just be touting the divisive issues. We should be getting something done. Right. Right. So our leadership doesn't need to just go to, I'm not going to work with these people.
Yeah, it shouldn't be all or nothing. No, right. You're saying politics, there's no permanent enemies, no permanent friends.
I think that's lazy when it comes to, if a leader in your community says, I'm not going to work with any of them, but they're going to be in office several years, we have to work this thing out. And so what I'm saying is that we have to work together and move our community forward. And even down to our race. I know we talked for a while here. We haven't talked about our Public Service Commission race.
Let's talk about it, Akitha, because I was a little heartbroken when I saw the outcomes, and I'm still trying to figure out as you're working through these last details.
It's amazing that
what's going on.
300,000 people come out to vote, and we're still down to a few thousand votes and trying to figure out who has the 50 plus 1%. But I feel confident that the votes are going to come out, and we're going to pull this thing out.
Where are you now? What's the status?
We're at 49.7% of the vote.
Wow.
All right. So
wow.
And so we haven't gotten several Hinds County, several other places in yet.
So you're still counting?
Or the counties are still counting.
Right.
And I think a scanning machine broke up down in Holmes County, so they have to wait till Monday.
Oh, wow.
So we'll know in a few days what the final county is.
Okay.
And I'm gonna, support the will of the people. I'm gonna support them. I just want to say that the last 18 months have been a joyous time for me. It has been a real joy. Traveling across these 22 counties.
I'm sure you have met some amazing people.
Man, I'm talking about 69,000 miles
wow.
all over this state.
Wow.
I mean, we've been to bar mitzvahs, barbecues. I done ate
totally
more fried chicken and collard greens and macaroni and cheese.
Shaking more hands, kiss more babies.
But we got some beautiful folks in this state.
We do. We have some amazing people.
And most folks just want to get something done.
Mm-hmm.
Most folks just want a better future for their community. They just go back and listen to this caveman thinking and go to their corners when it's election time and throw rocks at each other.
Uh-huh.
And then they come back after the election's over and everybody back working together.
You know, I was really concerned in your primary by a few rock throwers. I won't call names because I'm not going to give them any kind of credibility, but I was disappointed to see our own people.
Yeah, let me tell you this. Those folks who threw rocks at us, I have become a better man in this last 18 months.
You got a little strength in that.
I know exactly who I am.
Uh-huh.
I know who I'm not.
Right.
I know who my friends are. Mm-hmm. I know who they are not.
You know for sure.
And I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So for those rock throwers, for me, in our race, I love them. And ain't a damn thing you can do about it because I love you.
You are such a wonderful human being. Keitha for president, yay. Because I took a deep breath and had to just kind of move away from some things that were revealed about some people in that primary.
But it's going to be all right. Like I said, but at the core of it, we have a situation where we went from Jesse Jackson winning Mississippi and our electoral votes going to Jesse Jackson to a 70% Trump state.
That is amazing to me. Is it a shift in the population or is it a shift in the thinking of the population?
The infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So we have to recruit. I'm looking for 3,000 people to take root in their voting precinct and focus on reviving Mississippi.
Wow.
I'm looking for 3,000 people across this state, one or two in each voting precinct, to say, you know what? I'm going to spread good news and truth in my community, and we can take our state back because this state does not belong to the cavemen. This state belongs to regular people who want to do good work for their children and grandchildren, and we can do this.
I believe you.
We can do this. I mean, I can honestly say we can do this, and it's just going to take us working together. It's not going to take us, continuing to go back to our corners and throw rocks at each other and come back and work together. So, we got good folks all across this state. Folks in Washington County, when they come together, they say, hey, how can I help you? Folks down in Crystal Springs do the same thing. We got to spread that same culture around this state. And I just want to give you a second to say a few parting words so we can wrap this thing on up.
Thank you so much for the invitation to join you here today and to be a part of Reviving Mississippi. I love my state. I love my people, but I'm just discouraged at times. So talking to you helps me, and I hope that it helps the rest of Mississippi and the rest of the viewing world to understand what's possible. I like the way you think. I like that you see possibility where I see blight. I like that you can share thoughts that help enlighten me. I'm an optimist, but living through this election cycle in Mississippi, living through this election cycle in America has left me a bit disheartened. So having this conversation and hopefully subsequent conversations, we can enlighten Mississippi and others about ways that we can come together to revive our state. And hopefully that will play over into a larger discussion. So thank you for including me. Thank you for asking. Thank you for the invitation to be a part of this. I see where you can take this.
Well, everyone, we appreciate you. Just like we end all our shows, we always say, never let anybody put you in a position where you don't love your own people. Because when you hate your own people, you're part of the very oppression we're trying to lift ourselves out of. I love you, Mississippi. Thank you very much for your time. Gailia, I love you too. Thank you for your time. We'll see y'all next week.